Can't hear you, Tama.
There we go. I'd like to go ahead and share my screen. Let's see if we can pull it up. You able to see it?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Terrific. So Cheryl and I have put together a presentation, and the basis of the presentation, or the goal of this presentation, is to give you hints and ideas on how to organize to successfully collect accurate and valid signatures. And it's based on our 9 months of experience collecting wet signatures for the Recall Gavin 2020 campaign. And we recognize before we jump into this that there's many different ways to gather signatures, everything from canvassing door to door, attending events, rallies, tables in front of churches, retail stores, farmers markets. They all work. But the tips we're going to share with you will work in any venue or method of signature collection. And we're going to go ahead and review this kind of reproducible process and focus on how to set up a signing station with pop-up tents, because we ended up realizing that worked best for us here in Ventura County. We implemented this with between 7 and 10 weekly stations. We collected over 30,000 signatures for the county. That was just slightly over half of the 58,000 or so that were collected in the county. These pop-up stations kind of were born out of the hostile 2020 political environment and the COVID mask hysteria. So we had volunteers that were being harassed and threatened at tables in front of markets and supermarkets and retail outlets. And we decided that, you know what, let's just do a pop-up tent. That's our own space. People aren't going to bother us, and it worked. So we started off with one station, and out of that one station, we grew to a height of 10. And these people brought in anywhere from 100 to 300 signatures a day. And we were actually more visible with these pop-up stations because we had them all decorated with tents and banners and flags, and we were in very high traffic locations in the corner of very busy shopping centers. So with that, I think it's super important that everybody on this call understands their First Amendment right in the context of something called the 1980 Pruneyard ruling. It was Pruneyard versus Robbins. And you need to understand this ruling. You need to carry it with you. And if you know your rights, you will be confident in any circumstance. So Cheryl's going to go through that ruling real quickly. We have a link in this slide that, we're happy to share these slides with people. But you're going to want to have a copy of this when you're collecting signatures. Cheryl?
Yeah, hi. So the Pruneyard case was decided in 1980, and you should, like Tama said, click on it and print it out. It comes from a case up in Northern California in Campbell. The shopping center kicked out petitioners that were collecting signatures in a public gathering area. They sued and they won. You need to print it out and keep it with you at your table or your station. If someone tells you to leave, say, feel free to call law enforcement. We have a right to be here. If law enforcement comes, then you show them the ruling. And if the officer doesn't recognize it, you ask him to call his superior. Most officers were on our side, but obviously you never want to argue with an officer if they insist you leave. I doubt the California School Choice Foundation will pay your legal fees, but you should not ever be afraid to set up. You have everything to gain and nothing to lose. In our experience, the prune yard ruling was enough to stand your ground. And you need to, like it says, like minimum 4 stores is considered public.
Right, and that's the key. So if you're in a parking lot that's shared by a minimum of 4 stores, it is no longer a private parking lot. It is considered a public parking lot. And so do not set your tent station into desirable parking spaces. You know, put it in the corner where there's a lot of active traffic and plenty of parking where people can, you know, pull right in and jump out and sign. So Cheryl's going to talk about the signing or tent or table station that you have. Regardless, keep it simple. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Yeah, so if you want to use a pop-up tent, make sure you have weights for windy days, and I'd always keep them with me. You want a minimum of 2 school choice banners, preferably with grommets in it, so you can hang them from your pop-up tent with bungee cords. Consider having American flags. They help draw attention to your station. I would avoid tablecloths. They're just trouble when it's windy and something else. You don't really need them. We have our volunteers bring their own chairs, and all you need are 2 volunteers. Clipboards. You should have clipboards labeled by county. Post-it notes are helpful to keep the signatures from running into outside of the box and keep their signatures inside the boxes. And make sure you just use only standard black or blue ballpoint pens, no gel pens, they smear, and no colored pens. You also want to have a volunteer sign-up sheet, a donation jar, and I sign stickers. And Tama will tell you more about that. So here's a picture of the tent. You can see the banners with the bungee cords and the weights that we have on them. And that's what you should have.
Yep, two American flags, and we're right on the corner. This is Target parking lot in Camarillo. We were right on the corner, a very active location. Out of this one location, 9 other stations popped up because volunteers wanted to go out and set up their own.
Wow.
And you know, you need a minimum of 4 directional signs for your station if you're in a busy center, so that traffic coming in and out of all the other avenues can find your location. And hang them high if you're having trouble with people stealing your signs.
And they will. And they did.
Yeah, so we ended up zip tying them up. My husband brings a ladder and zip ties them up.
They were stolen, defecated on, urinated on, torn up, thrown out. It was a battle. Clipboard, Cheryl?
So these are clipboards labeled by counties because Tim, I tell you about mixing signatures.
Yeah, so one of the things that will be a death wish on collecting signatures is mixing signatures between counties. So if you have an LA County signature on a Ventura County page, it doesn't count. And what happens is the coordinators then have to send out a letter, stamped envelope, new petition, send it out to that person in LA County and have them re-sign. So the most important thing that you can do is go for accuracy. We had I think, what was it, Cheryl, 98% accuracy rate at our stations, because people that want to sign, they want their signatures to count. So that's right out of the gate. Make sure you've got a high accuracy rate.
Now, this is an example of a clipboard that you would use for large events, which draw from many counties. You just want to use one clipboard in that case and use some Post-it tabs to separate by counties.
Yeah, this is the clipboard this is the clipboard that we took to the walkaway movements in Beverly Hills, where we had many, you know, thousands of people and multiple counties, and one clipboard with, you know, tabs for the different counties. I can't stress this enough. This is why we ended up with 9 stations. So we had a volunteer sheet at every single station. print their first name, last name. On this volunteer sheet, you do not see a column for city. You will definitely want a column for city. We learned very quickly that people in Ventura are not, you know, that willing to drive up to Thousand Oaks to volunteer. They like to roll out of bed and travel a short distance to a signing station where they can volunteer. This was the key to us growing into 10 different stations from one. And we also ordered 2x2 iSign stickers. They're a very cheap way to advertise your station and to ensure that you're getting accurate signatures. So what we did is after people signed, we checked them, our volunteers checked their signatures. If they were correct, they got an iSigned little sticker. They wore that sticker out shopping for the day, and if somebody commented on it, they told them where we were and sent them our way. They were, I think in the end, we ended up handing out nearly 25,000 of these stickers to people that signed just here in Ventura County. I would also consider a donation jar, or we fully funded all of our stations, banners, yard signs, pens, clipboards, and all our iSign stickers. They were all self-funded. What we ended up doing is we ended up saying to people, I need a new banner. We want to set up a new station. My banner is going to cost me $40. Can you give me $40 and buy me a new banner? We just had 5 yard signs stolen at our stations. I need $15 more for a yard sign. So people were actually buying us, you know, I need 10 clipboards to open up my new station. So that's how we build that process. We also got enough donations, believe it or not, to get a mobile signing station. A friend of mine loaned me this trailer. Another friend donated the wrap, and this mobile signing station went out to bigger events. We just plopped up American flags, pulled down the back of the Land Cruiser, sign. That was our mobile signing station, which we also took to areas where our tents got kicked out, because you are allowed to stand by your vehicle and collect signatures. So Cheryl, you want to cover some tips?
Yeah, some tips is the goal is always accuracy, accuracy, accuracy. You want to make sure that you have accuracy. I can't stress that enough. And so one way is to keep only the clipboard for the county you were in on the table, and the other county clipboards off the table. And when someone comes to sign, you first question is, what county are you registered to vote in? If they're not registered to vote, you need to memorize registertovote.ca.gov. They can stand there and register to vote on their phone and then sign the petition. Don't talk to them while they're signing. Give them the instructions and then be quiet, because they'll make a mistake, they'll forget something. Then you check their work and give them a sticker. Again, Post-it notes helps keep them in the box. If they don't know which address they're registered to vote at, they sign for every address they have. That may be 3 different signatures. I had someone like living in 3 different places, didn't know where he was registered to vote. Well, okay, you sign 3 times, all at the one for each of your addresses. And if one of those addresses is in another county, then pull out the other county sheet. And if they don't know how, they can't remember how they register to vote in terms of their name, they can check their driver's licenses. That's the easiest way. And don't forget to ask them to sign up to volunteer, or ask them if they'd like to help you multiply and purchase a banner or sign and make a donation. So if you want to turn one signature into 10, you need to use a DIY kit. It's a do-it-yourself kit. What is that? It's a blank petition, an instruction sheet, and a self-addressed stamped envelope. DIY kits took the Newsom recall over the top. So what you would do is, after they sign and finish signing, you ask them, do you know anyone else who wants to sign? And they say, oh yeah, I got 5 people who will sign. That's great. So you're going to give them a petition to collect those 5 people. Then you're going to give them a petition to give to each of those 5 people. So when they walk away, they should have 6 DIY kits in their hand. And and that's how you keep multiplying. So every signature you get should be multiplied by asking them this question. And they can either return them in the envelope, or they can bring them back to any pop-up tent and drop them off, or they can go to any of the permanent signing locations and turn them in. But you need to have those DIY kits. This is just an example of the petition from Newsom. Highlighted would be making sure that you point out to them not to mix county signatures, because that's important, and that they have to complete the declaration at the bottom. And the next slide would be like the instruction sheet that was on the Newsom website. And then an address that's stamped with the address from the website on the envelope, so that they can mail it back if they don't want to drop it off somewhere.
Right. And I can't express enough how this really took us over the top. So, you know, after they'd sign, we'd move the person over to the second volunteer at the tent, and they would talk about, okay, do you know anybody? This is what you need to do. We do a quick little training session on how, you know, to make sure the signatures count. And I would say every week we probably got, I'm going to say, a minimum of 20 to 25 signatures coming back to the tents where people had taken them home. They didn't want to mail them in. They just brought them back to the tents and we turned them in. So this is a key way of multiplying that one signature and turning it into, you know, 10 or more. A quick comment about this. I don't know if we have this coming up. What you definitely want to do, and I'm sure this will be the case in the school choice initiative, you want to instruct people not to photocopy the petitions. And the reason being is the Secretary of State has some very, very strict guidelines and rules about the margins in these petitions. And if you copy them on a copier, they can be skewed and the margins will be off kilter and the entire page will get thrown out. So hopefully there'll be you know, on the website, a way to download and print the petitions as well as instructions. So one of the reasons I think that we had about 300 volunteers that had signed up to volunteer at these stations. We had 150 active volunteers, and we had enough volunteers to staff these stations every single weekend for 9 months. And one of the reasons is I believe we made it really easy for people to come back. We used a free limited service called Sign Up Genius, and you can, you know, bump that up for a little bit more robust feature rich system of Sign Up Genius. But basically what Sign Up Genius does is you create an invitation and it just copies it from week to week. And then the system itself will send out emails automatically when it's triggered. And then your volunteers will sign up to this for the shifts in the stations that they want to participate. So this is an example of the shifts that we did. We did very short, sweet, you know, 9 to noon, noon to 3, 3 to 6, and, you know, a couple people staffed. And people would work, you know, 2 to 3 hour shifts. When daylight savings time converted, we ended up going from 10 to 4 because it was just getting too dark by 5 o'clock. But this was another key about keeping our volunteers active and organized. They knew every Sunday night that they would get an invitation from Sign Up Genius to pick a slot to sign up at a tent. The system also reminds them, so, you know, later in the week they get a reminder, and it just automated the whole volunteer sign up process. And we only had to make calls later in the week if we had like that empty petition noon to 3 spot right there. then we had a database, if you will, of volunteers that we knew we could count on. Hey, can you work noon to 3? We need to keep, Ventura open. Cheryl, you want to go through the summary?
So you can do this. There are many different venues for signature collections, but know your rights, keep Prune Yard handy, stand your ground, and accuracy. Ensure that every signature you get will count. Use the do-it-yourself kits to multiply your efforts. Turn 1 into 10. Avoid burnout. Recruit an army of volunteers so people don't burn out. Encourage volunteers to mobilize in their local ethnic communities. We had this wonderful Vietnamese lady that would come and volunteer, and then whenever she would go to Los Angeles to some of her ethnic community events, she would go take her little table herself or take her clipboard with petitions, and she'd come back with signatures. So encourage them to all of your volunteers to do the same. Leverage the technology and stay organized, like Sign Up Genius will allow, and stay active on social media to post your signing locations. Post them in all your groups, post them Facebook, whatever social media you have, post them. And people will begin to know, that you're here, but it's still hard to get the word out to everyone, but just keep trying and have people keep sharing, and everyone who comes to sign, tell them to let everyone know you're here. You're at your location. Yep.
Okay.
Have fun.
Thank you so much. I have a couple of questions for you. This is Stephen.
Yep.
Okay.
And let me see. So let me understand. Were you people paid?
No.
Totally. Were they supplying you these printed materials and the tents and the signs and the sign-up kits? So you self-funded?
We were completely self-funded. We were able to access the instructions and the petitions and the graphics for the signs and the yard signs that we had made. All of the graphics and we were able to access from the website. So, and that was the brilliant move of the Recall Gavin campaign, is they standardized their graphics. They branded the recall very, very well. So everything was very, very well branded, and I hope that's happening behind the scenes here as well, with some serious branding about school choice or educational choice.
We are working on it. It's not where it needs to be yet, but we are working on that. I see Todd Madison has his hand up. Do you have a question, Todd?
Yeah, I do. There we go. Thanks. I was mobile here. So great. Awesome. This is awesome. Tama and Cheryl, this is tremendous. 2 questions though. I was a paid petition gatherer for a while back in 2018. And there's just a couple of things that I was kind of questioning. Is that, first of all, when you say to get 3 signatures, if they're at 3 different addresses, doesn't the fact that you have 2 invalid signatures create a problem when it comes to looking at because they look at the overall percentage of invalid signatures when they do this? They don't check, every single one they sample, right? Isn't that an issue?
Well, it didn't come up very often, but you don't want to lose the signature. It's my understanding. Maybe Tama can better explain.
Well, my understanding, we didn't want to lose this. Like Cheryl said, it did not come up very often. It was very, very rare. I mean, I actually didn't even run into that. I think Cheryl might have been the only one. And the other reason for the high accuracy rate, and we didn't learn this until later on in the game in the Recall Gavin, and I'm going to speak very loosely on the facts here, but my understanding is that somewhere around 96 to 98%, the counties actually can just start, if you've got a high accuracy rate, the counties can just start doing kind of random sampling instead of having to count every signature. And so that's why the name of the name of the game is accuracy, and do not mix those signatures up between counties. And that has to be the word out of the chutes.
Now,
And
the
don't
second,
deny anyone to sign.
so it's a moot point, kind of, is what I'm hearing, is that it's not that much of a factor. But the second issue is that we were really, we stationed like right outside the door of Walmart. I mean, we weren't in the parking lot. We were like right there at the door. And I can tell you, I was often getting somewhere upwards of 10 or 15 signatures an hour just by myself there, because people are just passing right by. You know, they don't even have to find you. Could you not do that, or?
Yeah, here's the difference.
I was at Walmart.
Yeah.
At one time outside with the table, but I stayed like 20 feet from the door, from the entrance and the exits.
Yeah.
And yeah, people just come by and would sign, but you can get more if you have a busier location.
Yeah. I mean, we had the same instructions you guys did about calling the police and, you know, the whole thing as far as that goes. I never had to do it. You know,
Okay.
Walmart's all understood it.
This is Stephen. I have one
Yep.
last question
Yep.
because we need to move on.
Yep.
And that is, did you find it more effective to have those recurring locations so the people in the neighborhood always knew a table was going to be at one spot, so they knew how to refer their friends? Is that true?
Yes and no. Yes, in some areas. I know 3 of our stations, they kind of got location fatigue. That's because the volunteers could only be out there on a certain day of the week. And so they would move around depending on, and it was very, very odd year because of all the lockdowns, and it was just a very odd time. So some of our stations did end up kind of moving around, especially in Ventura, where they got what I call, you know, location fatigue. But everybody knew that the Target station in Camarillo was going to be there every weekend. They'd send people down. I think the same thing with Cheryl up in Newberry Park, Thousand Oaks area.
Well, thank you so much. You give us a lot to think about. This is being recorded,